Hello, welcome to Q EDU. I'm so excited you're here with us today. My name is Frederick. My pronouns are they, them, and I am Out Youth's Texas Gender and Sexuality Alliance Network Coordinator. I am super thrilled to welcome our amazing panel here today. We've got some fantastic speakers from all across the African continent. This is really special. We will be having American Sign Language interpretation today, so your video will be spotlit on our interpreter, and you should also be able to see our speakers in their videos as well. You can definitely change the view on your end. All right, so because we have a ton of questions and a ton of amazing people to learn from today, I'm going to waste no time in turning it over to one of my personal heroes, an amazing feminist, author, activist, and general all-around badass, Mona Eltahawy.
Thank you so much, Frederick. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Mona Eltahawy, as you heard, and I begin every panel I take part in, whether it's via Zoom or in person, by saying my pronouns are she, her, hers, and this is my declaration of faith: fuck the patriarchy. And as you can tell, I am a very profane person. I use my language freely and robustly, and I encourage everyone else to also express themselves freely and robustly. I identify as queer and polyamorous, and we will get into identities very soon. But I wanted to begin, before I put the questions to our incredible panel, and Frederick, thank you so much for bringing together a panel from across the continent, because as many of you know, Africa, the continent, is so often divided in very artificial ways. And I was born in Egypt, and I very much identify as an African, not just a North African, but as an African. So I'm very glad to be speaking to fellow Africans about sexuality, about gender identity, about all the issues that we will be talking about today, because these are very much our issues. Too often when we have these discussions, these are issues that are considered white or Western, and that we somehow are not entitled to them. But as I'm sure will come across during our discussion today, these are very much our issues. These are issues that belong to us. They are a part of our heritage. They are a part of our history. They are a part of the identities that we all very proudly embrace. Which is why I began by telling you my pronouns and telling you that I am queer and I am polyamorous. And it's something that I want to discuss with the panel. I also want to describe myself to those of you who are joining our panel either by phone or those of you who are blind and or visually impaired. And I encourage our panelists to do the same. So I have very short neon yellow hair. You can see my black roots coming through. I am wearing black, thick-rimmed visual glasses, and you can see red lipstick on my lips. I'm wearing a navy blue sleeveless dress with an orange necklace that is kind of shaped like a triangle that is kind of divided into pieces. And behind me is an exposed brick wall and a painting of a topless woman. Across her chest is written, "There will be millions of us." So I hope that gives you an idea of how I look. Color is very important. Toplessness and sexuality and bodily expression are all very important to me. So let's get on with our panel, and I will be asking each one of our panelists to tell us their name, how they identify across the LGBTQ spectrum, their pronouns, and to give a brief description to our friends and comrades who require a visual description. So let's begin with Dali. Hello and welcome. Could you begin?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm extremely happy to be here sharing this panel with these amazing and beautiful souls. So my name is Dali. My legal name is Muhammad Ali, which is the Arabic background from it. So Dali Radewi, I'm from Tunisia, from North Africa. I'm a cisgender man. My sexuality is queer. I choose to label myself as queer and not other, as queer is more an umbrella that, lets everyone somehow feel similar and united, and without labeling everyone in different, names. So for those who can't, who are like using their phones or having some visual impairments, a tall, dark-skinned, Mediterranean, Arab, and African man. So I'm bald, kind of bald. I just shaved my hair, so I'm kind of bald. I'm wearing a black T-shirt with some military like the stuff on the shoulders, and behind me I have two big black flags for the LGBT community. One came from Germany to me, and one from the US, since we don't create those in our country. Also, some books that helped shaping me as a person. Some of them are political, some of them are historical. In always happy to be sharing this panel with everyone, and looking forward to learn from your stories and journeys. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dali. Jenna, hello and welcome.
Hi, my name is Jenna, or my full name is Jenna Lee. I am 17 years old. My pronouns are she, her. I am omnisexual. I'm assigned female at birth. I have brown hair, brown eyes. I'm about 164 centimeters tall, which is about 5'3". I'm wearing a black blazer with a pink peachish sort of bodysuit. I have two big pride flags behind me, and I smile a lot.
Thank you. Inquin, hello and welcome.
Yeah, hello. Good evening to everybody, because here in Cameroon it's evening. My name is Quine Hamlet, and I identify as a queer, but specifically B man. And then as to my look, I am putting on a black T-shirt and short kept, well-kept hair. And behind me, you could find a light blue billboard carrying their different posters of different Supreme Courts describing their political way at which they decorate their courts. And I am simple, I'm black, chocolate black, and a black queer man from Africa.
Thank you, Queen. I'm sorry I mispronounced your name. Thank you, Queen. Now, is this Prideworth Seema or Seema Prideworth? Because I'm not sure if you're using your first or family name first. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Malishonolo Prideworth Seema. I am a 17-year-old and I am a lesbian. And I am in South Africa. So I can describe myself like physically. I've got brown eyes, I'm a little bit chubby, and I'm short. I'm not short, but I'm sort of short. Yeah, so yeah, I told you everything. Yeah, I am just like that, and I'm looking forward for the conversation that I'm going to have with you guys, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot because I'm still young in this industry of activism, and you know what, I'm just happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you all so much. I'm so glad that we will have our introductions. I also meant to say that I'm 54 years old, which is something that is really important for me to say because, you know, along with fighting against all the forms of bigotry that we experience, I think it's really important that we mention our age because ageism is part of the bigotry we experience, and ageism isn't just directed at older people. Ageism is often directed at younger people as well. So I'm really glad to have a panel that spans the ages because we can all learn from each other. I'm very excited to be in conversation with 17-year-olds, and I hope that you are equally excited to be in a conversation with a 54-year-old because I believe that our life experiences are important and we enrich each other. So let's begin our discussion about what it's like to be all the identities that we are in the various countries we come from across our wonderful continent. Let's begin with Cameroon. Queen, could you give us an idea of the kind of laws that are in place in Cameroon that will immediately impact the LGBTQ community in your country?
in Cameroon, that's to say in Cameroon, we have the most catastrophic laws. We have two laws. We have one that came into the penal code as an ordinance, that is to say, the executive power that violated the right for the legislative power to put laws in place and inserted an ordinance into the penal code illegally without people being conscious. After multiple debate on it from people like Met Alice Com, a lawyer, barrister Alice Com, that have challenged on this open violation by the executive, they went through, the president decided to go through the legal way for this to become law, which was passed on like a bill in 2016 and was fully adopted like a law into the penal code that led from Article 347b/1 to Article 347(1) in the penal code. That fully gives power for authorities to criminalize LGBT persons for perceived or real sexual orientation. And as well, we have the article that was being set in place by the former Minister of Communication, that is Issa Chuma Bakari, Article 83 of our penal code on cyber criminality, that criminalize same-sex persons that engage into conversation electronically, and if by possible means this conversation get to like kind of to a reality, to realize itself, you are punished more double like to 5 years in prison. So you see, we have these two-way laws, but in one aspect, these are the two laws that like kind of fully criminalize every person in Cameroon, but are also contradicting other laws in the same penal code, like the law that protects privacy, like the law against discrimination. So you see that the law is there, but it's contradicting itself. I don't know, the legislator on drafting this law, drafted it in a certain way that could protect their own self indirectly without them knowing, because they made the law, but went along to strengthen the other part of it, that if you must get somebody that is committing the act of maybe homosexuality, it should be something that you get to engage to see them live doing the action, because the law says, the law condemns people engaging into sexual activities between themselves. So if you must see people engaging really in sexual activity between themselves, it means that you must break the law on privacy to engage in seeing. So it's so contradicting. So at one point we have been trying to call the attention of the state to realize this double standard in the penal code, which is protected, violating Article 2 of the same penal code, which stipulates that every law that is being drafted is drafted in accordance with international treaties duly ratified by the state. Means that the laws and treaties is above the national law. So you see all these contradicting aspects. We have not continued to hit our hands on the table to remind the government, whereas we find authorities at the local level still down there applying these laws illegally anyhow, and also the law that limits them from practicing anal examination. You find many cases of arrest around Cameroon, they go right to the point of still doing the anal examination, making it very catastrophic. That they say Cameroon is a country with its own particularity on the way they execute laws on every person. They might be doing it in a democratic way, but if you are not on the ground, you cannot really feel the pain in the way they used to execute the law in question. So that's it.
Thank you, Queen. You know, as I said at the beginning, I'm from Egypt, and this question is so important to me in how these laws play out or don't, because you know, in my country of birth, there isn't actually a law that criminalizes same-sex relationships, and yet the regimes, various regimes in Egypt, have arrested and carried out various crackdowns, very violent crackdowns that include, you know, so-called anal tests you were mentioning, Queen, even though there isn't an actual law. And they target the LGBTQ community through debauchery and inciting immorality, which is such a loose and umbrella term, so that you don't actually need. So there are some countries that have laws and some countries that go around the need for a law and get you, you know, through using other means, and we will get to how cultural means and religious excuses are used to justify that violence against the community very soon. But I want to welcome Robin first. Is Robin still here? Because I noticed that Robin joined us just before I asked Wayne to tell us about the laws in Cameroon. Is Robin still here? So I did notice that Robin came on and then went off again. Okay, so Robin doesn't seem to be here now. When Robin comes on again, I will ask Robin to join the conversation. So Jenna, could you tell us about the laws, if any, that most directly impact the LGBTQ community where you are from?
So I'm from South Africa, which is a population of 60 million people. And in South Africa, the constitution protects everyone within the community, which is great, from discrimination. And changing the legal gender has been legal since about 2003, which is kind of cool because that's the year I was born. And the community have been allowed to do as they please, have the same rights as those who are straight. And they can openly serve in the military, which is pretty cool. And thankfully, same-sex marriages have been legal since 2006.
Okay, and well, I'm now going to go to Prideworth because I would like to continue the conversation on South Africa, because I want to also hear from our South African friends and comrades about the law, which sounds great on paper, and the actual lived reality of LGBTQ people in South Africa. So could you tell us a bit more in continuing the conversation about the law?
Okay, guys, as Jenna said, like, we live completely free. The laws protect us as the LGBTI members, and reality-wise, I'm not sure that people really understand that, or really understand that we really people, and there are some people who still don't believe that LGBTI members exist. And like, it's so sad to see that, you know, when there are laws, you must abide by them, and there are people who really don't, because there are so many cases of homophobia, of murder in South Africa. Like, just that people just don't accept people who are part of the LGBTI. And for me, I always say that I don't need you to accept me, but I need you to respect me as a person. I don't need people to love me or other people to love me. As long as I have my family, it's okay. And I just need to I just need you to respect me as a person. Do not come to me and ask me questions about why are you a lesbian? How do you have sex? When did you realize that? I just need people to just mind their own business and let's just respect each other. But in reality, people are not abiding by the law of like protecting LGBTI people. Just that in South Africa, there are many cases of murder and homophobia. Just that. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dali, tell us about the situation in Tunisia, and so that we can move on to the next question as well, I will ask you two questions. Tell us about the legal framework that affects the LGBTQ community and how religion plays a role. And I will take the religion question to the other panelists as well. How and if religion plays a role in Tunisia when it comes to the rights and the ability to express your and live freely in Tunisia.
Thank you, Mona. So when it comes to Tunisia, we have this penal code with the law number 230, which criminalizes homosexuality and puts people in prison for 3 years for being homosexuals, and which comes with another thing, which is the anal test, which is a form of torture. But one thing to be mentioned about this law, that is only being applicated against men and not women, because of course, as you said, it's a patriarchal society. When homosexuality is for men, it is forbidden and ugly for them. But when it's women, they still think that women are sexual, so they still allow it somehow, which is extremely unacceptable in all ways. But however, one thing that is even worse than the actual law that puts people in prison for being gay is the actual social and economic exclusion that is happening in our society. In Tunisia, trans people, for example, don't have actual, like no way to have a job like normally. And I have a lot of friends who are very educated, very experienced in so many ways, who are transgender, yet they don't have access to workplace, which is one of the things that I'm trying to work on. Now, when it comes to religion, and you probably know that because it is very similar to Egypt. It is very similar to what's happening in Egypt. 10 years ago, when in Tunisia the revolution happened, which is 10 years exactly, the Muslim Brotherhood came and took control of the political situation. So we had some Islamist party, which is called the Nahda, ruling our country for 10 years, ruling with all its extremist ideologies and all the way they saw the society. However, with a lot of confrontation with our civil society, we could ensure a very liberal constitution. However, when we come to practice and executive power, another party and Islamists could rule with religion, of course, and empowering religious leaders from the Gulf countries to come to Tunisia and actually spread a lot of their homophobic and even anti-women and anti-everything, anti-life ideologies here. But one thing that happened a month ago, which is still unclear to me and to most people here, is that exactly a month ago, the actual president in Tunisia somehow stopped these religious political parties from, controlling the parliament and from controlling the actual political life. Now they're in prison, and during the entire month now, we're not sure what's happening. But again, when it comes to religion, I believe that since the democracy, since the 10 years ago, religion came back to power, religion came back and started getting power and started putting laws in the name of God and Islam. But nowadays, with what's happening, the entire population, with the conservative people and even liberal people, are all united against having, religion deciding in our political and social scene. So for now, I think that one thing that is happening is we're putting limits for the religion impact in our society. But this doesn't mean that we're stopping conservative people, because even if we, even if we just stop religion from controlling our freedom and our rights, I believe that the general mentality and the conservative values will be somehow a sort of barriers against us making sure that we get more freedom and more equality and more inclusions in society. So basically, I believe that for now, it is unclear what's happening in Tunisia, since we don't know if it's a coup d'etat or other sort of political, games. So we're just watching. We're just hoping that in few weeks we will have a more clear picture on what's happening right now and what's going to be happening in the next months and years.
Thank you for sharing that, Dali. I think Robin can join us by audio from Zimbabwe. Is that right, Robin? Can you hear me? And Robin, if you can join us, say hello. No? Okay.
It doesn't seem like Robin's connection is letting him join, but I think that Learn More is able to join via audio. Is that right, Learn More?
Learn More, are you here? Okay. So until we hear from Robin and Learn More, who I believe are both trying to contact us. Hello? Anyone? No. Okay. I will join. I will continue with the rest of the panel. And as soon as Learn More and Robin, Learn More is talking. Hello, Learn More. I can't hear you very well. Is anyone hearing Learn More, or is it just me not being able to hear him? Yeah, I think there's something wrong with your audio connection, Learn More. So I will move on to the rest of the panel, and we will return to you as soon as we can hear you more. So I would like to take the question about religion to the rest of the panel and also expand to include more of a historical overview. So Queen, let me take this question about religion to you and include along with it a question about colonization. So how do religion and colonization play in impacting the freedom or otherwise of the LGBTQI plus community in Cameroon?
You bear with me that this religious aspect goes in two ways with the law. It's given the fact that when you ask somebody, why do you commit violence against LGBT persons, you find out that someone will tell you that it is because the Bible condemns it. And you ask him, if this verse in the Bible wasn't there, the verse you use in justifying your violence wasn't there, could you commit the violence? You said, until then, you reply, until then, the verse is not yet out. So you see, the way the religious aspect plays, like let us take those who champion one of the key violent issues on every person around Cameroon. It is the Roman Catholic Church, because they're the pioneer, the Roman Catholic Church and the Islamic movement. That is, whenever it is at their attempts towards advocating on removing this law from the penal code, you realize that they go behind and use their indirect power to like influence those who can try to make these changes, and they would like further stagnant with their position. Coming to colonization, you will notice that in the early times, in the 1976, I think, if I'm not making a mistake, these laws were not existing in Cameroon. The laws that criminalize it were not existing. So when sometimes people say that homosexuality is important, we rather further remind them that it is the law that was imported to Cameroon, because the penal code never knew this. But when their colonial masters came, they came with their ideologies, their own perception, their own concept of how to see things, on how to better arrange humans, on how to live, especially in the African continent in general, because they came with their indirect rule, with their way they want to see Black people dress, Black people move, the kind of food they need to eat, the kind of language they need to speak. So you see all this played a very gigantic role in the current situation that most countries that are in Africa with AIDS persons and the health they are going through. You notice that all these laws were being imported in a certain time during the period of the colonial masters that were like part of what to setting them on how to live, because they say Africa is the avenue of humanity, means that it started here. If homosexuality should be something that went eastward to Europe, not come to Europe, to Africa. So that's it. So these things play a greater role on the current situation of each person. In Cameroon is more greater, that because everyday churches are coming up. Churches are coming up, and us as civil society actors or activists, we find it difficult to change the perception, even though we are not relenting our effort towards educating people on the need on how to see and interpret the Bible and understand it as it is written. Because sometimes people just read the versions of the Bible that pleases them and use their religion to manifest their hate towards every person. And sometimes we call their attention to them that you are not doing the right thing, because this is not what this same Bible says, because it's not like they like prove to us that they have the monopoly of reading the Bible, of which we are reminded that we also read the Bible. The fact that we are independent doesn't mean that we don't read the Bible, we don't believe in God. We believe in God in our own ways, individually, and our perceptions are so different in their own ways, and they cannot know that's bullshit you guys are saying because you don't know what you're doing, you need to change. So in one word, not to speak too much, I think the religious aspect in a different country is playing another catastrophic role. The fact that we even, at one point, we were like, just few months ago, we were talking about the US ambassador was to come to Cameroon that's supposed to be a gay married man. And we saw a priest that created a whole movement right to the point of him manifesting in front of the embassy to tell the government that they don't want to see the gay ambassador in Cameroon. And I said, oh, we called a meeting to meet this Reverend Father to tell them, okay, you need not to, like, you can express your views, but do not incite violence towards those who are already facing a lot of harm. I think that God is loving, and God is not the person that put harm or put visa. And the priest got some few messages, and that's it. In the same, is in the same thing that's the same thing we did with Cardinal Tumi, late Cardinal Tumi. He was like portraying, he was one championing hate towards every person. By the time we met him for a conversation, he liked to change the way of talking on the issue, because we say you are religious leaders, and we know the roles like imams, cardinals, bishops, and stuff. The kind of role you play when you stand on your pulpit. If you say tomorrow 1 o'clock, everybody will be here tomorrow 1 o'clock. That means you carry a lot of force towards what you transmit as a message in the mind of those people. And we have been trying our best, but with new churches, it's very difficult. Very difficult, because we can see some few churches are a bit tolerant, but there are some that are pioneer instigators of hate. That's it.
Well, thank you, Quayne. I think, you know, your response was really important, and I think these are issues that we can continue talking about because of the ways that religion and colonization and the geopolitics that enter into both. Because, like you said, you know, religion is not the sole property of homophobes, because there are many people who are queer, LGBTQ, of various identities, who are also religious. And it's really important to remember the colonial history that underpins so much homophobia to this day, including the laws that were so often imposed on our legal systems across the continent from various colonial powers. Before I continue with the panel, when it comes with the question of religion and colonization, I want to welcome Robin, who Robin is in Zimbabwe. Welcome, Robin. I'm so glad you could join us. If you could please introduce yourself to us, telling us your name, your pronouns, giving us a description for friends and comrades who are joining us who are not able to see you for whatever reason, and telling us a bit about, tell us about religion and colonization and how those two very potent issues impact LGBTQ communities in Zimbabwe. That's a lot, but we've missed you, so welcome to the discussion.
Good evening. I hope everyone can hear me. My pronouns are he. Well, I'm Robin. My pronouns are he, him. I am 18 years old, and I actually reside in South Africa, not Zimbabwe.
I apologize.
I identify as trans masculine. I believe I'm supposed to give some physical traits of myself. I am about 1.5 meters tall. I'm dark skinned. I have short curly hair, and I wear glasses. In terms of religion, I think that, especially in South Africa, I know that certain religions do not obviously accept LGBT youth, and therefore it's very difficult for them to come out. In terms of colonialism, I don't have a lot of details in order to share for that side, but I can say that I do know that obviously colonization caused I would say the white race to come into power. And I think that played a role in terms of like people of color not being able to come out, and it being easier for white people to come, white youth to come out in their communities. So yeah, So yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Okay, well, thank you, Robin. I'm glad that you are part of our discussion now, and I'm sure I will come back to you very soon. I would like to ask Prideworth to tell us about how other issues in South Africa, because you and Jenna both told us that the Constitution and the legal framework in South Africa have laid out rights that make, rights for the community that rarely exist in other countries across the continent. So I would like to know, Prideworth, in South Africa, how do other issues like disabilities, ethnic backgrounds, living in, say, more rural settings versus urban settings, how do those other issues, so basically, class, ability, ethnic backgrounds, various ethnic groups, how do they impact LGBTQI plus people in South Africa?
Okay, thank you. In terms of disability, like everyone is like welcomed, like everyone doesn't judge you, but in terms of where you live, it really depends on the community's knowledge of the LGBTI and the acceptance that and the support that they're going to give you. Because in the rural areas, they expect a woman to be married with a man, and that's that. You know, they are more of culture based and not more, do not have a narrower knowledge and a broader knowledge of the LGBTI. So all they know is that a man will be married to a woman, and that's that. And there are kings and queens ruling the rural areas. So they are so like traditional, so that everything goes to tradition. And the LGBTI doesn't fall under that tradition, whereby a woman can marry with a woman and a man can marry with a man, and people can be trans. You know, everyone is free to do whatever or he or she wants or they want. So in terms of like area, like it's more of where you live and how will they accept you. And in the suburb areas, we are exposed to LGBTI people, so we know more about them and we are able to research as like youth, you know, because in the rural areas, there are not as many resources as in the suburb area. So in terms of that, like it's really a disadvantage to the rural people and to the rural areas because they do not have a knowledge or a broader knowledge of the LGBTI. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Jenna, I would like to come back to the issue of religion and how you see religion impacting the LGBTQI plus community in South Africa.
Thank you. So South Africa, in terms of religion, is very diverse. However, the two main dominant religions are Christianity and Islam. So I myself am Roman Catholic. I am religious. And to be honest, religion does play a huge, huge factor in homosexuality and people being homophobic. And the reason that the reason why I say this is, as Hamlet said, people choose certain things to take out of the religion. So for example, last year Pride, we met I think two women who were in a same-sex relationship, and they were going to get married, but we had to sign a petition because the church wouldn't allow them to use them as a venue. And it's not just that. I've been seeing so many people in our community being turned away for whether it's weddings or whether it is just a simple blessing because of their sexuality. For example, in my school even, we have such little knowledge in terms of education, and especially in the adults in our community, because of their religion and their traditional backgrounds, they are sort of conditioned in a way to think homosexuality is bad and we shouldn't respect or condone it at all. And this sort of flows into the children and into the pupils, and people like me and my partner, we get discriminated against a lot. And the excuse is because it's against my religion. And I've done some research and I've asked so many people, and nowhere in the Bible or the Quran does it say that homosexuals should be discriminated against. We've searched in the Bible and the Quran, nowhere does it say that. It doesn't condone it, but it does say you should respect your neighbor. And I think what some people in their religion do is they take the specific things that they like and they sort of turn it against us. Instead of looking at the part where they say you have to respect them, they choose to see it's a bad thing, you shouldn't be a part of it. And because of that, a lot of us are being discriminated against, and to the point where we can't even go out and be ourselves, to the point where we can't even hold hands in public for fear of being called gay or something being thrown at us. So I feel like religion plays a huge, huge aspect. Not to say that religion is bad or that it's the main cause of homophobia, but I do feel that it plays a huge, huge factor, especially with those who are extremely religious or extremists or have a very, very traditional way of thinking. I feel like that plays a huge, huge role in homophobia, especially in our country.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. Robin, I'd like to include you more in the discussion because we had so many questions before you were able to join. So could you tell us about your activism? Give us an idea of the kind of work that you do in South Africa.
So when I started high school, I obviously came out in high school, and I started realizing that within my school, there were a lot of students who were never comfortable enough to come out or to be themselves, authentically themselves, without feeling the need to apologize for it. And I've also realized that in our school, the environment makes it incredibly difficult for the students to come out. So a group of us, we obviously have been going through it, and we knew we wanted to create that environment for other students because we knew how it felt to kind of grow up, because that's high school is literally where you find yourself and where you grow up. So we knew how difficult it was for us to become ourselves and to blossom into who we are in an environment that we found ourselves in. So a few years back, we decided to start a committee within our school. Unfortunately, because of certain, I'd like to say authority roles, people who are in authority, we struggled to get the committee up and running, but eventually, after lots and lots of perseverance, we managed to start the committee successfully this year. We've had an awesome protest. We've had we've had 2 meetings in order to inform more students in our school, educate them on LGBT issues, any LGBT questions that they've had. We've made ourselves available to anyone who's had questions. We've made ourselves available to anyone who's questioning their own sexuality, sexual orientation, gender issues. We've even tried to get a workshop going for the teachers, but because of COVID, things have been set back a lot. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing, and I'm obviously very, very proud of that. So yeah.
As you should be. Thank you, Robin. Dali, could you tell us about your activism in Tunisia and elsewhere, wherever your activism takes you?
Sure, thank you. I just want to I have 2 remarks regarding the question about colonialization and religion, which I'd love to share quickly. So regarding religion, even though I'm not religious, I really think that Islam as a religion doesn't attack in any way homosexuality, because after all, religion is a text, is something that you could interpret, have your own interpretation by projecting your own values and your own way of thinking and reflection. So just one thing, because internationally, queer people from the Arab region or from the MENA region are mostly not religious. So somehow there is no way to showcase the religion of Islam in a way that is gay friendly. And I really think that Islam is a very gay friendly religion. So I just want to say it and just move forward. So regarding the penal code against homosexuality, I just want to say that it was implemented by the actual French colonization in Tunisia and actually in North Africa. I'm talking about Algeria and Tunisia mainly. So I just want to say that these homophobic laws are just the heritage of a tough experience with the French colonization that we didn't get rid of it somehow. And regarding my own activism, I really can't label it, but I would say that I'm trying to work, I'm trying to include the queer battle in so many aspects. So basically, I'm working with UN Women Generation Equality Forum. So I'm one of the NGYAs, which is the National Gender Youth Activists, which is one of the most essential structures that led to the creation of Paris 2021 and Mexico 2021. For those who don't know what is Mexico 2021 and Paris 2021, it's the biggest women's rights and gender equality summit ever in the history, I think, of the world after Beijing, after the Beijing one. So we raised $40 billion for gender equality, including LGBTQI plus fights, which is the biggest pride of this summer. But I'm also working on other things such as the COP26, which is the Conference of Parties happening in England in 2 months, I think, with the United Nations climate change. So I'm also putting queer people and women in the first line. I'm trying, at least, I'm not putting, but I'm trying to have like small contribution in putting queer people, minorities and women in the first line in adapting to this climate change adaptation, economic adaptation and social adaptation. Because I think that in the last industrial revolutions, women and queer people couldn't join. Not the first one, not the second one, not the third one, but now we're having another one. And I think it's the perfect occasion for women and queer people to jump in and to lead and just make sure that we exist in every budget line, in every, allocation of strategy. So these are one of the two things I do, but I'm also an intern with the UNDP regional hub for the MENA region. I'm working on the gender team. We're trying to tackle LGBT in the MENA region, but it's hard because the UN is, after all, working with governments, and it's quite hard to work with some, especially when there's monarchies and dictatorships. You just can't ensure that that's happening. But other than that, I'm also working with the European Commission on a program called European Climate Pact Ambassador, which is basically trying to create a network that is also pushing for climate justice, including women and the LGBTQI plus people. But other than that, and in the national level, I'm the founder of Nafas organization, which is a very new organization created in Tunisia, but trying to tackle inclusion in the entire MENA region. So my strategy is basically, since Tunisia is the only basically democracy in the region, so we should use Tunisia as like, the gate to the Arab region, maybe also to the African continent when we can. So the strategy of this organization is to not get in confrontation with the governments, because most of the organization or gay organization or queer organization in our region are in direct confrontation and continuous battle against government. And it's not something that I'm trying to do. So basically, we're trying to be as diplomatic as possible to actually create some workplace inclusion. We're just tackling the inclusion in an economic way for trans, gays, for lesbians, for everyone in our community. Because once we ensure that we have financial stability, once we have the power of money, I think we just won the battle. So what Nafas is doing at this point is actually creating a huge network of businesses in Tunisia as a first step. And we're trying to bring as much as possible of international support to actually create a large amount of economic inclusion for queer people in Tunisia as a start. But once we do that, we're gonna try to tackle Palestine. We're trying to tackle Lebanon, as I think somehow it's easy to work on Lebanon and Palestine for now. But once we do that, we're gonna try to, expand our activism in the entire MENA region to ensure as much as possible inclusion in the economic file. So basically, these are one of the few of the things that I'm trying to do. One of the I just want to add something that you mentioned, age, and I really love that you mentioned that, because for a long time in my life I was actually ashamed of mentioning my age, and it's like weird because okay, I'm not ashamed of saying I'm queer anymore, but I'm still ashamed of mentioning my age, because at some point for us as young people, and I'm 22, throughout your experience, you're always looked up as, young and inexperienced person, even though you are. So thank you for mentioning age, and thank you for, putting that there. Okay, we're young or we're old or whatever we are, and it's just a number, and we can do whatever we want besides having that number in registered. So thank you for that, and I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you, Dali. Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. Prideworth, please tell us about your activism, and also to move the question into the next one that I'll be taking to the panel, because I see that it's 10 minutes to the hour. Could you tell us, Prideworth, first about your activism, and then how you take care of yourself, taking into account the homophobia that we speak about and the various forms of bigotries that we fight? So I'd love to hear from you about those.
Okay. Firstly, my activism started when I started being a young radio presenter at our local radio station. It's called Akhanang FM, and through that, I was able to voice out my sexuality. I wasn't scared because I'm living in a community whereby people are scared of coming out, and it's full of thugs. So you cannot just come out and say, "Oh, I'm lesbian. Oh, I'm gay," because you'll never know what people will do to you. So I was able to gain confidence when I'm still in radio, by the way. When I started radio, I think it was grade 9. So yeah, I started being the voice of the voiceless. We started having topics, and I started presenting about the LGBTI and challenges faced by the LGBTI. So I became the voice of the voiceless there. And I think it was last year, I recently joined Action for Social Justice. It's just an organization of the LGBTI that protects the rights everywhere, like everywhere, wherever you are. Just that when you're a member, they like, are you a member or you're not? They protect your rights, and they take matters seriously in terms of people offending the LGBTI, whether physically, whether emotionally, whether cyberbullying. They take it like seriously because they know that we are in danger, and the community that we're living in, it's just not nice. Yeah, so that's how I started my activism. I still want to grow in terms of experience. I still want to grow in terms of me, like seeing things and learning things from other people like you guys. It's really an opportunity for me to be here, like to be engaging with you, because I can like learn a lot from you. How I take care of myself, because my community, I wouldn't say all of them are homophobic, but I would say that 50% of them are homophobic. Then I do not really have a strategy on how I take care of myself. I just become me. And sometimes I'm careful of what I say to people, because you'll never know what people are going to do to you. So I check who I am talking to. I check my language, and I check their attitude towards what I'm saying. So if I say to a person, "Oh, I'm lesbian," and I'm really proud of that, and the person start giving me lectures, or no, lesbianism, and in Bible, God doesn't want people, such things as that, I start like cutting the conversation, because I know it will end in arguments, and it will end in even physical fights, because people are homophobic, and homophobia is something that you cannot see physically, because it's like inside. So the minute you talk to someone is the minute you realize that the person is homophobic or not. So my strategy kind of thing is just I look who I talk to, and it's really working out for me there. So that's how I take care of myself. Thank you.
That's so important. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jenna, how do you take care of yourself?
I think it's very, very difficult to take care of yourself, especially during COVID. But I have what I think I should call an amazing support system. I have my family, I have my friends, I have my partner, I have my teachers. Actually, one of them's joined. And I look to them for that sort of support that I can't get elsewhere, especially because I'm such a young individual and I just recently came out. I'm a gay bee. And it's kind of difficult to sort of validate yourself. People would look at you as a young person and be like, oh, they're just going through a phase, or oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They have so much left to learn. When in actuality, that's who I am. And so I look to my friends, my partners, just like for clarification, for validity, so I could feel myself. And other than that, I turned to my school, my committee. They're so supportive, and they provide that safe space for queer youth that is just so amazing and answers so many questions that everybody's has burning up inside of them. And there you can feel yourself and you can be yourself unapologetically. And other than that, the main way that I take care of myself is I have this mantra, which I keep repeating: I am worth it, I am me, I am proud. And sort of repeating that every single day reaffirms it in my head so that all the discrimination that's going on around me doesn't get me down or make me less proud of who I am.
Thank you, Jenna. I love your mantra. I will remember that. I hope everyone else watching will also remember it, because I think it very, very succinctly addresses so many of the issues that we're talking about. Robin, how do you take care of yourself?
I think it's difficult, especially in South Africa, because I'm on social media, of course. There's a specific account on Instagram actually where they obviously post a lot of gender-based violence and LGBT related murders and things like that. So of course I see a lot of those LGBT murders happening obviously in South Africa. So I think it's incredibly difficult for someone in South Africa who is part of the LGBT community not to feel kind of panicked or feel that kind of anxiety, because you're just being you know who you are, and you feel like you should, I mean, not you feel like you should be able to express who you are without having the fear of being murdered or being harmed in any way. So I think it's incredibly difficult in that aspect. But in terms of looking after myself, I guess I also just remind myself that I have every right to be who I am. And I don't have to apologize for it ever. And I also just, if I feel like someone is obviously picking up an argument about it, I choose to leave it. I know that arguments are not usually, you're probably not going to win the argument. So just leave it at that. As long as I feel like the person is in no way going to harm me, I would just go about my day, because it's not supposed to be normal, but it is normal to come across people who unfortunately don't agree with how you live your life. And I choose not to let that get me down, because obviously if you keep listening to those things, you will find yourself in a space that you would not want to be in. So that's all that I do. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Robin. I also want to acknowledge Learn More, who has been posting their responses to the questions. So thank you so much, Learn More. I think it's really important that the panelists and everyone attending sees your questions, because we can't have you on. So I appreciate that, and please continue posting your responses to the questions I'm putting to the panel. So Queen, how do you take care of yourself regarding your activism and homophobia and everything else that you have to deal with?
Firstly, I would like to say I am living an equivalent life like Muhammad, like the kind of person with a shame of the age and stuff like that. But it's just of reason that I got hold of myself to say, anyway, you are not young, because the age is not the matter, it's the fantastic work you're doing on the ground that matters, and how you are saving people's life and how they do appreciate it and stuff like that. About taking care of myself, I think in a country like Cameroon, we know that the government doesn't protect activists. So what we do, we are our personal watchdogs, means that we are putting charge of our own personal security. Like personally for me, when I'm in my house, if I go in 20 times, I lock the door 20 times. If I go out 20 times, I lock the door 20 times. This is just to ensure that I am in good hands in my own space. Avoid unnecessary conversation with people, getting into unnecessary arguments that will not make sense. I always tell myself this in my inner mind: those who are homophobic around you, they don't need your attention. Those who need your attention are those that at 4 a.m. in the morning, they call you and say, Hamlet, please, I'm at the police station. I need you to come and take me out of here. Those are the people I say, okay, I invest 100% of my time on my work with my colleagues, because that is where I spend almost all my time, from my house to the workplace, from the workplace to my house. So I spend all my time with them, and I spend all my time investing on helping others. So I think just doing that, it gives me a lot of joy, makes me to be happy. makes me to feel like I'm useful. When somebody told me the Hamlet, they're going to kill you in Cameroon, you need to you come live in USA, you come live in, I told my friend that I can come visit you in the USA to pass some time, but I can't come stay in the USA because I believe in and of me that there are people back here that need me. Because while in the US, it's fine. I will go to continue schooling. I will have to do many other things, but I will not be saving a people as I am doing in Cameroon. So I told you, was like kind of, I don't want you to die. I care a lot. I said, don't worry. Why not? When the time comes, you don't need to let me know, and I will come over and stuff like that. So to better keep my mind up, I have learned to share my time with those that matter. Passing my entire life working like a volunteer in my community, back in my village there in the Northwest, because I come from the Anglophone region, just to know that Cameroon is a bilingual country, it's French and English, but I come from the English part of Cameroon. I started my whole life volunteering for a medical health center, an integrated medical health center, giving educated talk to pregnant women as small as I was, distributing vaccines into community, around my community. From there, I came to Douala, which is the economic capital of Cameroon. That's where I got to meet Alice Com, that was in need of somebody that speaks English. And I was there, and I told him that I'm a queer person and I can speak both French and English. So you can take me for this. So that's how I started engaging with Alice Com and got the necessity, because at first I was like feeling sad to affirm myself, like talking about myself to people and stuff like that. But I just realized you don't need to justify yourself to anybody. You don't need to tell people, because people don't move up to you and tell you that I'm heterosexual. You just need to be you and move on. And this is how I started working with Alice Com. I started finding the inspiration to better engage in defending LGBT persons that are voiceless, that cannot stand up for their rights, because not every person in Cameroon are educated, and more of those that are arrested all the times are mostly those of them that are not schooled. And sometimes when they are in prison or in the police station, they're stranded. And all the people like us that gather some courage to go see the police and tell them, you need to tell me the circumstances of this arrest. We remind the police that this arrest, you do not respect the procedure of arrest, and we exige that you liberate them immediately. So this is spending time with them, is gathering more experience. Every year I gather new experience, get to meet new people, assist in as many webinars that I can, like I'm doing now, passing my time talking, dishing out some live videos on Facebook to my fellow LGBT person, teaching them on how to live in a hostile space like Cameroon, because I know Cameroon is the most hostile space. It's one of the hostile spaces in Africa where homophobia is climbing every day. And I try to tell them to live, engage on social media, engage with other websites like Grindr, Badoo, and other stuff. So this is how I invest my time in living on this earth, because I know that if you want to keep time to answer homophobic people, you will not leave your own time. Because I have a saying from a friend, Hamlet, you don't live tomorrow, but you live today, because you have to enjoy now, because failing to enjoy present, will fail to enjoy tomorrow. So you need to start living the present like there was never tomorrow. So that's it. I live every day. I'm so conscious of the fact that activists run into danger all the time. They can kill you anytime and stuff like that. So to that has removed that fear for death in my heart. And I live and I keep moving on, that anytime there's a possibility to help somebody step up, help the person, no matter the barrier, the dangers, and how it takes. So I'm just aligning like Muhammad from Tunisia, I think. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Queen. I will now go to Dali in Tunisia. And could you tell us how you take care of yourself, you know, considering taking into account all of these issues that you've told us you work on? You have a lot on your plate.
Okay, so first thing to be said is I myself don't know how to take care of myself. And I think no one actually does. So we actually learn as we grow up to really know how to take care of myself. But I have 3 points that I would recommend through my experience. First thing is therapy. I really believe in mental health and always going to therapy. Therapy should be like a regular activity in your life, because with everything happening in the world and social media, we need to go there and like, you know, give yourself a new breath by just like changing the energy. Second point is to actually prove love to yourself, not just say, I love myself, just prove it. How do I love myself? So to me, it looks like exposing myself to opportunities, like working hard, I believe that that way I could put myself in positions in a way to tell myself, I love you, so this is what I did for you. And I think the third point is, which is very, very important, is to actually have a bubble. Because in my case, I live in a country, in a homophobic country, but also where being me is a crime, and I would go to prison and lose whatever privilege I have. So what I did is actually I built my own bubble, my own circle of like very like healthy people, and we actually do whatever is being done in New York in terms of like, you know, partying, living our lifestyle. Even what I mean is, even if you live in Africa or in Arab region or whatever, even if you have and you face barriers, you don't have to hide all the time. You need to give yourself that, you know, time, like time frame, or like that space to actually express yourself, to actually be yourself totally. And I think that that happens by just like, you know, having an important queer network that like will give you the needed knowledge and like life hacks to actually know how to live a lifestyle that is healthy, and that allows you to be a queer person, a proud queer person, and doing whatever you want without having to always hide. So I believe that these 3 points would be good recommendations.
Thank you for sharing that, Dani. I would also, I'm going to combine a few questions here because, you know, I live on social media. I live on Twitter. I live on Instagram. I'm always there. I'm trying to take a break, but it always fails. So I want to know how or if social media helps what you do, helps your work, helps your activism, or and how you use social media. So let's begin with Robin. Robin, are you on social media? What social media do you use? And do you find that it's helpful to your activism?
I am on social media. I use Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, your regular social media. I try not to use too many platforms because it gets tiring, you know, trying to keep up with everything. Um, I would say that in terms of our committee at school, the platforms like WhatsApp have helped in terms of getting word out on like meetings that we would have. So it would be sent to class groups so that the whole school obviously had information on where the meeting was, what time, which date, and those kind of things. Um, and then of course things like Instagram helped as well because our school has their own Instagram page, and um, a lot of our meetings and things were advertised to the school's Instagram page as well. In terms of like just, you know, you hear lots of stories about how LGBT rights have been violated and those kinds of things, and of course sharing those stories and um, providing some education on those stories and connecting people, that serves as a form of activism. So I'd say that on Instagram as well and Facebook and those kinds of things, connecting people. Obviously on my Instagram story I would repost stories that I would feel needed rectification or that I would feel needed some light on it. Those are some of the ways that I use my social media in order to kind of be an activist and in order to, well, obviously it helps with our committee at school as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Right, Beth, what about you? Do you use social media and how do you use it?
I've got only two social media platforms. Mainly, it's WhatsApp and Facebook. I'm not a social media person. So I only use Facebook for the page, the radio page that we've created as presenters to post about new topics that we are going to present about, and obviously information that we're going to give out, and any question that any listener has about that topic that is related to what we're saying. And WhatsApp, it's only about meetings and, us when are we meeting and which topic to discuss this Saturday, because we usually do our show Saturdays. Then, and there's that. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter. I really don't have many. I just have two.
Okay, fair enough. What about you, Jenna?
So I am on quite a few. I'm on WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, just any, like all of them. And honestly feel like if you have that voice, you really need to use it. And how we do that is we repost. For example, like we have this thing in South Africa called Keeping the Energy. And it's an Instagram page where it posts a lot of gender-based violence and LGBTQ violence. And what you usually do is you post it onto your stories, and a lot of people can see it, and it reaches a much larger network. So I believe like if you keep reposting, if you keep sharing these stories, it'll reach a much larger group of people instead of just 1 or 2 followers. So I feel like social media really, really helps in that aspect, especially when trying to educate people, when trying to spread awareness, when trying to sort of gain justice for people. I mean, there's the George Floyd movement that reached so many people, and I feel like we should be harboring social media a lot more often, sort of use it as a space for activism and sort of reach a much larger network.
Jenna, I realized that I wanted to ask you about your activism as well. I mean, I know you've mentioned various aspects of the work you do, but give us an overview of the kind of activism you're engaged in.
So I just happen to be in the same school as Robin, and we formed the committee, and not only that, but we were able to start our first ever like event. And I happened to come into contact with this amazing drag queen. Her name is Miss Inappropriate, a beautiful queen. And she gave these wonderful words of encouragement to us. And we sort of reaching out to a lot more people to have them come into our school, educate our learners, educate the teachers even. We also, I think, are having a psychologist come in to try to educate our staff as well. We also have a safe space, a safe group on, I think, one Friday every single month. And everybody just comes along. We even buy food. So it's just amazing. Other than that, I feel like my other forms of activism personally is doing a lot of writing and posting it on my blog or on my Instagram, and just sharing my story and a lot of the other stories out there, because I feel like if you share your story, it will connect a lot more to other people and they can relate and empathize a lot more.
Thank you, Jenna. All right, Dolly, tell us about social media and how and if you use it.
Yeah, sure. I'm on every possible social media so far, and that's for 2 reasons. Okay, so the first reason is mainly that you know the concept presented by the Wachowski sisters, Lana and Lily in Sense8, about people being connected in different continents. I believe that social media presents that in a magical way. So basically, it's a possibility for us to be connected and to have our loved one really close to us. So it's not even a choice. It's like a way for us to be connected as human beings. But the most important reason, or another reason, is the fact that I'm looking for allies and partners since I discovered that I may not be hetero, you know. So since that day, I started understanding that if you're gonna do this by yourself, you're gonna lose. So since that day, I started looking for allies, and I never stopped. So I believe that social media is the perfect way for us to have people who could empower us financially, or with being our mentors, or being our friends, or in any possible way, you know. So I believe as activists, that's a way for us to gain power and empowerment, and actually do the other thing by empowering other people so they could empower us in another time. So social media is it is not the best thing that happened to humanity, but I think it is very helpful to us as young people and as activists.
Thank you. Quayne, tell us about your relationship with social media.
I think with social media, I am on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, with Snapchat. And there are specific reasons why I joined each of these platforms. In the context of Cameroon, most Cameroonians are more engaged on Facebook. If you want to get their attention, speak to them through Facebook, maybe through your page or through your profile, and they will come, they read it, and even pull it to write articles from there. And we also develop, I and my team, a series of lives that we organize to dish out information in terms of educative talks, because knowing that to bring every person in a space to talk to them is always sometimes not easy and also risky for them. We cannot kind of fully cooperate in taking in consideration all of them that usually come to our center and their security. So sometimes we now develop a new strategy, which is like always going live 2 times a week on Facebook to educate and talk, engage with them. And then we see we are progressing because a lot of them feel more comfortable to express themselves maybe from their houses than taking themselves out of their houses to come to the center to educate, to maybe attend a program. On Twitter, I use Twitter because I feel Twitter is a political space. Beyond what they like try to exclude every person in Cameroon from the political arena, but I find it to be so necessary and an interesting space where I get to engage. I can talk about my president, I can talk about the ministers, I can talk about other persons when it comes to holding them in accountability on key issues and engaging with the rest of the Cameroonian society on issues of development, social well-being, and living together and stuff like that. So this is where it's a space where it brings more connectivity between the political group of Cameroonians than that of Facebook. So sometimes we engage there with more specific target. Who do you want to talk to? Who do you want this message to read to? Because you can easily tag them and you know that this person will read my message and will be able to, if he can respond, can respond. This is where we also engage, given the fact that our country is not that much too decentralized. Like in other countries, we find decentralization. So you might be in the country and you stay your whole life to the day you die without even meeting one minister, not even talk an ambassador. So stuff like that. So we know in these places, when you tag an ambassador, we write a message to an ambassador on Twitter, you can easily answer and respond to your message, maybe like give you a direct rendezvous. You can come to the embassy and maybe because we know to chat these things, we need to talk to them. So this is how it works. While on Instagram, I am on Instagram. I'm just like, Instagram is where I go also to relax my brain, see how things go about there, and see how people do project their articles. Sometimes I go also to buy things, like check on what can I buy easily from these different profiles that are on Instagram, and also go sometime on TikTok to laugh a bit because I don't develop content, but I just go to laugh for myself, for my brain to be fine. And just to remind people that Africans are one of the highest people that know how to deal with mental health, because remember that we don't have people who go on through therapy all the time or psychologists that are already set out to deal with the mental health of most LGBTQIA people who are facing difficulties. So sometimes I look at them and I always tell some of them when they come to the office, I say, you are strong. And I believe in you, keep being strong, because I know it's not easy sometimes to deal with these things when you are, first of all, you don't have the ability in terms of finance to pay for these therapies and stuff like that. While we are still advocating on the process to fully engage with people that do this part of the work. Because it's a great work, but you find most queer persons who are Black, sometimes you get to go along and deal with some of these mental health issues without even going for therapy. So I always tell them that, wow, you are so strong, and I love you for being brave. Keep on, and that's it. So those are some of the things that I do with social media so far.
Thank you, Quinn. You raised great points about the need to laugh. I think that connects to, how you take care of yourself, and TikTok, and finding, ways to laugh and to release and take selfies and put them on Instagram or whatever, that helps you feel good in the middle of, the very political work that we all do. And I think it's a great bridge now to my next question, which is probably going to be my final question because I'm looking at the time. We have about 11 minutes left, something like that. I want to hear from all of you, and I think it will help people watching to hear from all of you how the pandemic impacts us, especially because we've heard, the pandemic has exacerbated and will continue to exacerbate already existing injustices and inequalities. We've heard how during the pandemic, rates of domestic abuse, domestic violence have increased by at least 30%. And within that domestic abuse, of course, is the abuse and the discrimination against LGBTQ people who find themselves under lockdown with family members who do not know that they are LGBTQ, with people who are very hostile to sexual identities or gender identities. So I would like to hear from all of you about whether through your work or personal experience, how the pandemic is impacting the LGBTQ community where you are from. Let's begin with you, Prideworth. Tell us about the pandemic and South Africa and the communities.
The pandemic has really affected South Africa badly, because we currently experiencing high rates of murder and domestic violence like everywhere. And there's this group whereby our organization is helping people who are needy in this time, because obviously if an individual is working and is independent, then they just got retrenched. They have to go back to that homophobic house, that homophobic home whereby they were treated badly. And it's financially, obviously, she or he or they are not okay. And emotionally, she or he or them, they will not be okay. And it's they're living under a pressure, because in that group we face a lot of numbers whereby people ask for groceries, people ask for financial assistance, and it's such a sadness that has overcrowded us, because LGBTI people are really suffering in South Africa, because it's not easy again to find a job if you are any member of the LGBTI, because there are some people who are just homophobic and they won't hire you, and there are people who will treat you badly. And I feel like the LGBTI members have really faced a difficult time during COVID-19. And in my community, there are a lot of people who don't work. There are a lot of people who depend on their parents and their family members. So emotional, they are not okay, and financial, they are not okay. And I mean, it's such a bad thing to see people who are needy and who request more. And the more they request, the more that we cannot like provide them with everything, because we have a limited budget that we have to like give out, and there are so many that we cannot just like give it like give the money to. So it's not really okay, and it's sad to see people suffering during COVID times. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Prideworth. Dali, could you tell us about the pandemic and its impact on the LGBTQI plus community in Tunisia?
I think the first thing to be mentioned is that the majority of like transgender people in Tunisia work by night. So that's one thing to be mentioned when you have a lockdown and there is no actual work and jobs by night. So basically, I believe that the majority of the LGBTQI plus community was affected financially in a very like bad and serious way. All my friends who are artists, drag queens, or sex workers, or any type of work that is being done mainly in the night, didn't find a job during an entire year. So I believe that the lockdown affected us in so many levels. Also, we can talk about the people like living in families and in groups with people who are homophobic. We were affected in multiple ways. And I think now that Tunisia is ending the lockdown, we're trying to figure out how to change things at this point. But again, what happened during this year wasn't actually helpful at all for the advancement and the empowerment of the LGBTQI plus community in Tunisia.
Thank you, Dali. I will go to Robin. I was going to go to Queen, but Queen looks busy. Robin, tell us about the impact of the pandemic on the communities that you work with through your activism.
I think that the effects of COVID-19 in South Africa is countless. I don't think that we would probably sit here forever if we had to talk about the effects that the pandemic had on all countries actually. But just to name a few that I can think of, I know that obviously a lot of LGBT youth, just LGBT, anyone in the LGBT community, living in a household where they are not accepted for who they are, obviously probably they probably never even came out to their families yet. And I know that obviously during the pandemic, obviously we had lockdown, which means that they probably couldn't leave. And I know that a lot of people in the LGBT community, that is the only time that they are able to be themselves, that they are able to express themselves, is by not being at home. So obviously spending time with friends who are supportive, going to LGBT events, those kind of things. I know that also specifically here in Cape Town, we've had every year in March we have a huge pride event where many people from LGBT communities or even just allies come and support, and it's an amazing event where everyone can kind of feel supported, and we celebrate the fact that we are ourselves. So I think that was also a huge loss. We haven't been able to have it twice now because the pandemic started last year March here in South Africa. So I think that's also another way. And another, I know that many LGBT youth have also, I wouldn't say accidentally been outed, but some family members have probably found out and kicked them out, meaning that they would have to seek shelter. And obviously now during this pandemic, it's incredibly difficult. Businesses that are taking in homeless LGBT community members are obviously having to keep their numbers lower in terms of staying in line with COVID-19 protocols. So I can only imagine that it's difficult for them to find places to stay and things like that. So I definitely think this pandemic has had a significant effect on the LGBT community. Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. So, Queen, tell us about the situation in Cameroon.
I will say that we are almost having similar situation with a little bit of differences with all the other countries like South Africa, Tunisia, and my other colleagues from the different countries. But with Cameroon, we think that this is the year that we were almost thinking that the LGBT race will end, because we passed our time in 2019, 2020 to produce an annual report that showed clearly how there was a drastic reduction on arbitrary arrest on every person. Towards this year, the beginning of 2021, as the COVID pandemic started, we have had a series of crackdown on LGBT that are so devastating, that has caused so many prejudices, some of them being tortured, some of them because the government felt that with the blockages that COVID came and caused, they were at no point to be held accountable for the actions by bilateral partners or the international community that could not trespass or cross their limits towards entering their countries the way they want. Because in the past, when something like that happened, a crackdown on the community, you have experts and independent commission come to do investigation in the country, in and out, and just like that. But now, since the pandemic, it has not been the case. And also, the pandemic also came and limited key avenues where we could meet with the government officials and hold them accountability, providing them direct report without people being like, we go deposit an office to be carried to them, because we have not been attending key strategic international conferences where the president, the ministers, and ambassadors do take part. We could hold them fully accountable, because we know that we could not meet them in country, but when we get to meet in these avenues like the United Nations, the African Union, and stuff like that, we could hold them within the corridors and tell them, Mr. Minister, this is what has happened. What do you have to tell you? We want you to tell us that here and now. And you see, you get to take them to task directly, and you see them make key decisions that could be so impactful to the community. But since the breakout of the pandemic, it has not been the case. We have been facing worse and worse. The needs keep climbing. Those who have been outed, kicked out of their homes, they need shelter. Our shelters are already more kind of full. We cannot accommodate, but we still think we still kind of find additional resource to help people out of the shelter. So you see, so this pandemic has not like kind of been specific in the kind of way it has impacted, because when you see the government planning on how to address the pandemic towards various community, you will find out that the LGBT community were completely left out in terms of taking consideration on the key people, like specific groups. You will find out that the government did not take in consideration anything about LGBT people. They were completely left out of this on the strategy. So you see that in all aspects, from the start of the pandemic, towards now that the pandemic gets to a cross stage, it has been so horrific for every person, for them living in a space where first for them to get a job is a problem, for them to get more socialized with other people is a problem. Now imagine when they are sick, it's still a problem for them to get access to health. We are battling for them to have access to maybe get the HIV medications freely, and now you still have the pandemic for them to get services that are linked towards this kind of thing. So it's like a double work that came and added to what we are already combating since decades. So that's it.
Thank you, Queen. I appreciate that overview. Jenna, is there anything you'd like to add before I wrap up to what you've heard our friends say about how the pandemic has affected the communities they work with?
I honestly feel like activism, and especially in the LGBT community, relies a lot on events and education. And I feel like because of COVID, a lot of it has to be shut down. So not only are we facing that, we're facing less pride, we're facing less protests and education, but also because of the amount of people that are trapped within their own homes and kicked out, our support shelters are so full and people aren't sort of educated on how to go about when their child has been outed or handle certain situations. And I feel like COVID has not just impacted our entire community, but the entire country as a whole.
Thank you, Jenna. I think, so on this very somber note, and this is a very somber time across the world, there's no sugarcoating this. This is a very difficult time for many people across the world. I really appreciate your candor and your honesty and the activism that you bring to this very difficult time. And I thank you all for sharing your own individual work and how you create from your own work networks of support, even during these very difficult times. And it was an honor for me to be in conversation with you all, with Tunisia, with South Africa, with Cameroon, and learn more. I'm so sorry that we could not have you with us, but I'm so glad that you joined us with your words, and maybe in a future event, we will be able to be in audio or visual contact with you too. And Frederick, thank you so much for this opportunity. I will now hand it over to you, and I send you all love and solidarity, and fuck the patriarchy. As I always say, I begin and end, fuck the patriarchy. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mona. All of our amazing panelists. I have learned so much, had my mind blown over and over and over again. I'm super grateful that we were able to make this happen. Thank you all so much for staying up into the middle of the night to do this at a time that made sense for Texas. We're indebted to you. And we would love for y'all to join us next week for our last week of Q EDU 2021. On Tuesday, we're having a conversation with non-binary elders. Wednesday is a conversation that's specific to Texas, but it's about how different school districts can bring Pride Week to their school campuses. Thursday is Sex Ed Q&A round 2. And then on Friday, we finish with a panel on advocating for the LGBTQ community with elected officials in Texas specifically, which is a whole thing because, you know, Texas and all of y'all's countries are not that different in some of these ways. So we're incredibly grateful for all of you for joining us. Thank you, everyone. I can't thank you enough. Bye, y'all.
Bye.